Hello everyone, we've got something today that I've been looking forward to for quite some months, and this is the Sega Mega Drive mini console. So this comes out a couple of weeks later in Europe than it did in the United States. This is obviously based on the Sega Mega Drive, which released in the late 80s, also known as the Genesis in the United States for reasons I'm not quite sure about. So this obviously falls in the wake of a number of classic mini consoles that have been released over the last few years. These things have been released for a long time, but generally in an unofficial capacity. The wave kind of started arguably with the NES Mini quite some years ago. Then we got the SNES Mini, we've had things like the C64 Mini, I believe there's been a Neo Geo one, and there is a PC System Mini or something like that coming out next year, which should be quite an interesting one because that's a console I have no experience with at all. I probably got the name of that wrong, so do feel free to correct me. But one of the interesting things about that one is it's got quite a few interesting Japanese games on there, including the original Snatcher, which will probably be likely unplayable for me because it'll be in Japanese, but it's always been a game I've wanted to check out. So enough about those, let's actually talk about the Sega Mega Drive Mini. So like I say, this comes out sort of in the midst of a wave of classic retro consoles being re-released. Of course, one of the big questions about it was, would it actually be quite a good experience for people? Because the NES and the SNES did really, really well, and we all know that the PlayStation Mini didn't do quite as well as it was expected. So this, obviously, as you can see from the main box, you get your mini Mega Drive console, you get two controllers, and you get 42 games here, including the Mega Drive version of Tetris, which does have quite an interesting history behind it. To my recollection, it was supposed to be released on the Mega Drive, but there was some sort of legal issues with its release. It didn't get fully released, but there are some cartridges lurking about which do go for quite some money. But what do we get on here? We get things like Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, the Sonic 1 and 2. Strangely, no Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles there, but we do get Sonic Spinball, we get Echo the Dolphin, Toe Jam and Earl, we get Earthworm Jim. Just sort of like a huge array of classic Mega Drive games which sort of span the various developers for the console. It's not just your Sonics, it's not just, sort of them sort of games you remember. It is quite an interesting array of stuff I'm very much looking forward to delving into, because there's some games here that I have not actually played or experienced. So we'll actually have a look inside the box and see what you get with it. So first of all, kind of the more boring stuff you get is you get your HDMI cable, which not that exciting, and you also get a USB power cable. These things do actually run off of USB power. You can plug this into a USB plug, or you can plug it into, as I'm going to when I power it, my PlayStation 4. So next thing we'll look at what we get are the Mega Drive controllers. So as you'd expect, they're full-size Mega Drive controllers. Plug them in via USB ports. And very much like the classic Mega Drive controller, the buttons feel really, really nice, the D-pad feels really nice. You get the 3-button variation here, which I know has caused, not controversy, but a few people have complained about this. Apparently the 6-button controller is possibly better for games like Street Fighter, which is a part of the console. Personally, not a big fan of fighting games, so I don't know how much it's going to impact me. But we'll just get a original Mega Drive controller to compare it against. You can see that in one thing. So very much like the original. On the original, the buttons feel a little bit softer because this is an older controller, but it still feels really, really nice. Now, as I've alluded to, I always really, really liked the Mega Drive controllers. They always felt really, really nice to hold. They fit in your hands really neatly. And that's both the 3-button and the 6-button variations. So let's have a look at the main thing. Now, one thing I would have liked to have done is a comparison shot of this with an actual Mega Drive console. And whilst I do own a Mega Drive console, I don't actually own this particular shape model. I own the Mega Drive 2 variation. So a comparison shot would be a little bit useless, unfortunately. But this is a pretty good representation of it. It's, this is what it looks like, but smaller. You see we've got the sort of the volume button on the front, your on-off switch, your reset switch. Now where the control ports would be, you've got your USB ports there to allow you to plug your controllers in. On the back, HDMI port and your USB power cable. And you've got your cartridge slot here, which also opens, which probably quite useless, but that's really nice. It's very, very lightweight, much like the SNES Mini is. It's an absolutely stunning replication of it. I've always really liked the Mega Drive console and the way it looks. It just looked like a really nice bit of technology. I kind of feel the same way for a lot of Sega's tech, to be honest with you. The Saturn actually looks pretty nice, and I do think the Dreamcast has its fit moments as well of looking nice. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through a couple of games on it, show off the menu screens for it, and see how this thing plays. So, the first thing you'll see when you boot up the device is the language select screen. From what I understand, if you do select Japanese here, you will get the Japanese versions of some of the games, which I think in the case of something like Mean Bean Machine might make quite an interesting version of it. Not 100% certain on what does have alternate versions though. So this is the game select screen, very easy to navigate, no messing about here. You see all your games there, you've got Alex Kidd in the top row, you've got Echo the Dolphin columns, 2 Sonic games, Shinobi 3, there's a Castlevania game on here, Street Fighter 2, Earthworm Jim. Just so many there to explore, like I say, about 42 in total, so we'll keep you occupied for quite some time. So next up we'll have a look at the settings menu. You see you've got wallpaper settings there to change your backdrop. You either have nothing or just various things. You've got screen settings, you want full screen, or do you want it with just the borders on there, staff credits, legal notices, and a read this before playing, which is just kind of like your epilepsy warning. You can sort the games by release date, A to Z, number of players. So we'll launch into the first game. Of course, we want to be Sonic the Hedgehog, how can we not? So again, boot up the game, goes through all your standard stuff. You recognise the famous Sega sing-song voice. And then we go into Sonic 1. So, a little bit of a confession, I'm not as huge a fan of Sonic 1 as I am 2 onwards. I think Sonic 1 is a very strong game for what it's worth, but once you've played 2 and 3 and that you do miss those little extra special abilities. Worth noting, I'm not very good at it. So I'll just let the gameplay speak for itself. So, with Act 1 complete, we'll take a look at another game of it. This is Road Rash 2. Now, Road Rash was a particular favourite of mine on the Amiga, and I've had subsequent versions on the PS1, and it's always been a game I've kind of wanted to see make a comeback. A little bit of a golden age of EA games back in the early 90s, things like Populous, Theme, Road Rash, and of course you had your Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, which I'm kind of surprised to not see at least Desert Strike represented on this compilation, but then again sometimes the rights for these older games can be a bit tricky, so I'm not sure if maybe EA don't hold the rights to it or whatever. That could be speculation, they probably do, maybe they're saving it for another compilation. So this is Road Rash. As you can see, it's a motorcycle racing game. You deck people in the face and you can collect weapons and hit them in the face with doors and knock them off bikes, and they've all got names like Buffy and Biff and Viper. You can see me there not being very good at the game, being knocked off my bike. Transition to a later point. You get chased by the police in it. The cool things about it is you do your races, and then once the race is complete you can upgrade your bike, unlock better bikes, go through various scenes, various tracks, sorry. And it's a really good, really solid and fun game. I believe there is a game out nowadays called Road Redemption, which is a little bit of a spiritual successor to this one, so it might be worth looking out for, but this is just such a fantastic game. So next up on our list is Streets of Rage 2. Yeah, another one, not completely great at. Never actually completed a Streets of Rage game. I do know someone who used to, or was very close to holding a speedrun record for Streets of Rage, or some sort of points record on it. It's a really good game, soundtrack is absolutely fantastic, so I'll stop talking and let you hear that. And finally we have Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 is represented on the SNES as well. It's another version of it. I never really did fully understand the various Hyper Fighting, Turbo, Alpha, whatever Ultimate Editions of Street Fighter 2. It's a game that still kind of holds up to this day. Even though I'm not a huge fan of fighting games, still cannot deny the impact that Street Fighter has had. So there we have it, that is the SNES Mini in action. It's a really great little console. I can definitely recommend it to people looking for sort of their retro fix, or looking to, if you've ever been intrigued by the Sega Mega Drive at any aspect, it's a great starting point, you know, better than sort of going out and buying the original hardware and then sourcing all of these games for yourself, because that will cost you quite an amount. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in future videos.